Good morning. It's April 2026, and I've got a little bit of morning porridge extra for you this morning. This is an excerpt from my new book, The Battle of Hamble, which you can find on Amazon. I'm delighted to announce that I launched the book last week, The Battle of for Hamble, and you can find it on Amazon. It's an in-depth look at how they want to build a Hamble gravel quarry right in the middle of our village. It's an example of everything that is wrong with broken Britain's inept planning processes, bureaucracy, and how greedy corporates arbitrage the system and economic illiteracy for their own ends. I've written about the quarry many times in the morning porridge as an example of what goes wrong in government, and this morning I thought I'd share a sample from the book, and this is an edited couple of pages from the chapter on planning bureaucracy. The planning industry and information paralysis. A consequence of understaffed planning departments is how a whole legal industry of planning lawyers has evolved to insist the planning bureaucracy and represent parties to planning disputes. Lawyers being what lawyers are, they are slow and complexify the process, aiming to be paid more. Planning law is one of the most lucrative and highest paying sectors of the legal industry. Dan Davis is a former Bank of England economist and author of The Unaccountability Machine. He's written extensively in what he calls the problem factory, the system that has evolved within many democracies that makes any kind of development an expensive nightmare. It's founded on the basis preemptive risk aversion means the real risks often end up marginalised and buried under expensive bunkum, just like the HS2 bat tunnel, which I'll describe in a moment. He describes how the planning system has been suborned by legal firms seeking to maximise their fee income. They spot problems in complex development proposals and then solve them, getting paid by both sides. One way to describe the ecosystem of lawyers, consultants, and experts that have evolved around planning is the marvelous Russian expression nomenklatura, a faceless, self-supporting, self-sustaining, unelected group of unknown names that influence and control every aspect of planning and thus growth and the economy. Because of the reputations they develop fighting difficult planning briefs, the top planning lawyers hold significant sway and power over local authorities that their clients expect them to influence. Planning procedural overkill makes for bad planning decisions, especially when planners are so busy investigating the number of dormice on a site that they utterly fail to consider the real effects of things like the proposed quarry on vibrant local economies. The political economy of bat tunnels. In the grand scale of things, the planning excesses and the man-hours expended on debating a quarry no one really needs or wants on Hamble Airfield are tiny. If you really want to understand how daft the systemic madness of planning has become, let's talk about the UK's world-famous Bat Tunnel. In rural Buckinghamshire, there is a small patch of ancient forest, Sheephouse Wood. It had the great misfortune to discover itself on the path of the railway from nowhere to nowhere, HS2. Among its varied wildlife are bats, including the very rare Bechstein's bat, which, by dint of not being very reproductively minded, benefits from being very, very rare and thus a very, very protected species. Since it's wisely chosen to live on a site of special scientific interest, an SSI, anything that threatens its favourable conservation status, for instance a speeding train, even rarer than a bat in the UK, must be mitigated for. After a couple of years of debate, surveys, consultations, and more debate, the colony of probably less than 30 sexually disinterested bats is now protected from terminal contact with ambling locomotives by a tunnel built over the tracks. Should they wish to fly to the other side of their wood, they will have to fly over the Bat Tunnel. It looks marvellous. It is a triumph of British engineering and design, and someone will no doubt have won an architectural award for it. But the costs have been staggering. I am reliably informed the final bill will vastly exceed £250 million, and no one is quite sure how it happened. No one recalls just how it was agreed that a bat tunnel was the optimal solution. No one remembers who first said, "We must protect the bats with a bat tunnel," but it's happened. They followed process, they stuck to procedure and precedent, but don't even bother trying to read through all the documentation around the decision. It will only give you a headache, and you'll expire from frustration with multiple discussions about scheduled works, mitigations, applications, environmental impact assessments, more mitigations, and other such planning tosh and nonsense. You can just picture how it all happened. At some point in a planning meeting, in a room full of very earnest planners, ecologists, planning consultants, their lawyers, and associated hangers-on, they reached item 37B, paragraph 5.3 on the agenda. The dialogue escalated quickly from, "We found some stuff that might be bat guano," hush, shocked silence, to the final conclusion years later, "So, we're all agreed that the best solution is a 1/4 yard's worth of bat tunnel." A yard is market slang for a milliard, 1,000 million, or a billion as the Sherman says. Gratuitous use of more market slang to describe our American cousins, who are increasingly known as septics for obvious reasons. Now, the bats in Sheephouse Wood are blissfully unaware of the hundreds of planning officers, consultants, designers, environmentalists, bat huggers, bat sexual health professionals, and other concerned folk who bravely and courageously debated and argued their case. All the experts who opined at extraordinary length on the potential outcome of bat versus train incidents, who counted the bats, who opined on the sustainability of the tunnel design, who compiled the council's multiple reports on landscape and woodland amenity, the inspectors who inspected and corrected the health and safety aspects of the bat tunnel construction, and all the lawyers who represented the bats, the council, railway builders, and others in the multiple meetings to discuss, plan and approve the bat tunnel, well, they are all absolutely delighted. They've had years and years of gainful employment and the satisfaction of zero bat versus train fatalities thus far. To be fair, the bat tunnel is likely to sit undisturbed by trains for some time yet, just like all the other HS2 infrastructure that's been completed well ahead of the first expected trains on the line in 2033. While a nod's as good as a wink to the proverbial blind bat flying above a bat tunnel, was £250 million on a bat tunnel good value? Or should we have offered the flying rodents a much cheaper, purpose-built Addams Family-style haunted mansion with lots of bat eaves, somewhere less endangered by trains? And if you think that bat tunnels represent a planning system that's lost its mind and purpose, let's not forget the millions spent on the fish discos required to dissuade the 40 or so tons of fish that might get sucked into the cooling system of the UK's next generation nuclear power plants. It's delayed their construction through endless debates for a decade or so. What we do know is that planning system is very weighted in favour of bats and fish, and especially dormice. Planners will do practically anything for dormice, but not for people. Anyway, thanks very much for listening to this excerpt from my new book, The Battle for Hamble. You can find it on Amazon, and you can also find it copied quite often in the Morning Porridge, which you can sign up for on www.morningporridge.com. Thanks very much. I'll probably drop a few more bits from the book onto this website. Thank you very much. Cheers.